But one thing I wanted to open with is when humans operate in systems, whether it's a family or a business, they can somehow store information and share information outside of verbal processes, outside of even body language. We're able to hold information outside of ourselves. One theory, which I find quite compelling, on how we're able to do this is called the morphic field. And so I'm going to ask Krisana to share a little bit about what is the morphic field and how is it important to how humans interact with one another.
So the morphic field, as we had said in the other podcast, was about when a group forms and how there's a formation we talked about with the birds, and there's a certain knowing field that they're all communicating with, but not verbally, or so there's a field there. So also we have our own individual self, we have our own individual history, but we are part of a bigger system, a collective. So it either can be your family, or it can be a system at your work, or a club you go to, a sports club. But if you look at you're part of a family system, and in this family system, everyone has a right to belong, who belongs to this family system, and it starts to guide a certain behavior of the system, whoever's in it. So the system has this field of how one should be in this system. So there's certain laws, there's certain orders, there's orders of balance, there's also orders of who belongs, orders of exclusion, many different principles that govern this. And there's also underneath that a collective conscience. And these are hidden forces that also affect the people's behavior in this system. So there's also hidden forces or a collective conscience, not consciousness, even in systems and organizations. And it was a way to keep the group together. So groups. So, for example, living in caves, there were certain hidden principles that weren't spoken about. What you do in the cave, what happens outside the cave, who living in the cave, different what you do outside that you wouldn't do inside the cave. So these are all these hidden conscious, so that you don't upset the system. And these can be carried on and run through, and sometimes when they're out of balance, they can create disharmony, and they can create loss and disorder in the system, and also they can be passed on. So there's certain principles and there's certain laws that are working in this field of influence, this morphic field that keeps a group together. And they're principles that we have in family systems and laws, and they're also principles that happen in the wisdom of success. So there's certain operating hidden laws that keep this field together. And that's called the knowing field or the morphic field.
And so my impression, especially in a United States, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, in these kind of cultures, because we've been conditioned in a very individualistic way, we almost think of evolution as an individualistic process. It is how I, as an individual, came to be from something before me, and how I, and my biology, and my physiology developed. And I would like to say that we are social creatures. So, in addition to how I developed, there's also how we developed, and the processes and mechanisms by which the group intelligence is able to get higher. We have, as Krisana mentioned, certain almost self-correcting mechanisms in how our brain operates that is around social engagement and group engagement. And so there's a lot of studies done that one of the kind of intrinsic parts of humans is fairness, some level of fairness.